October 28, 1942. A strong wind blows sand across the horizon in the wide, empty desert of North Africa. Loud booms of artillery fire fill the air. The ground shakes as explosions rip through the desert. In the distance, soldiers of the Australian 9th Division are advancing. Covered in dust and sweat, they move carefully through dangerous fields full of landmines. Tanks roar behind them, and the sky is lit up by the flashes of gunfire. The Australians are tasked with capturing a key position called Trig 29, a hill that could give them a clear view of the battlefield. Under the cover of darkness, they launch their attack, pushing forward despite the enemy's heavy fire. The battle is fierce, and the Australians know they must hold their ground no matter what. As they reach the top of the hill, the Germans counterattack. Enemy troops come in wave after wave, trying to retake the position. The Australians dig in, fighting with everything they have to hold Trig 29. For days, the Australians endure intense artillery bombardments, machine gun bursts, and constant attacks from the Germans. An Australian signaller later described the area as the worst spot I have been anywhere in this war. Erwin Rommel, the German commander of the fiercely strong Afrika Korps, sends no less than 25 counterattacks to break through their lines, but the Australians refuse to give up. The fighting is brutal, and the losses are heavy, but the Australians hold on, knowing the fate of the war depends on them. As the dust settles, the 9th Division stands victorious. Their heroic defense of Trig 29 played a crucial role in the Allied victory, at what will become known as the Second Battle of El Alamein, a turning point in World War II. Once again demonstrating that when Australian soldiers stand strong, history is made. But why was this phase of the battle so important to the Allies? And how did holding this single hill help the Allies defeat the great Erwin Rommel and eject the Nazi regime once and for all out of Africa? To understand that, let's go back to the middle of 1942, when the stakes in North Africa were at their highest. The brilliant Rommel, nicknamed the Desert Fox, had led his forces through a series of victories that pushed the British and Commonwealth troops back into Egypt, threatening to take control of the Suez Canal. If the Germans took the canal, they could seize the valuable oil fields of the Middle East, a key resource needed to fuel their war efforts. It would have been a disaster for the Allies. In this dire moment, the British knew they had to act fast. General Bernard Montgomery was given command of the 8th Army, which included soldiers from Britain, New Zealand, South Africa, India, and of course, Australia. His mission was simple but incredibly tough. Stop Rommel, break through his defenses, and push the Germans out of Egypt. Rommel's forces were well protected, stretching over 40 miles from the Mediterranean Sea to the harsh Qattara Depression, a natural barrier. His strongest defenses were in the south, where he expected Montgomery to attack, while the northern sector relied on difficult terrain and his powerful tank divisions. But Montgomery had a secret weapon: the 9th Australian Division, led by Lieutenant General Leslie Morshead. These brave Australians had already earned a legendary reputation for their incredible stand at Tobruk the previous year, where they proved their skill and determination in desert combat. Known for their toughness, resourcefulness, and never-give-up spirit, the Australians were perfect for the task ahead at El Alamein. Morshead's battle-hardened troops would play a key role in the fight to turn the tide of the war. On October 23rd, Montgomery started the Second Battle of El Alamein by launching a large direct attack on Rommel's defenses across the entire front. The goal was to clear the huge minefields, called the Devil's Gardens, that Rommel's troops had set up and break through into the open desert. Once in the open, the British, with more tanks than the Germans, could use their numbers to outmaneuver them. The first part of the battle, called Operation Lightfoot, began with a powerful artillery strike that shook the ground along the 40-mile front. Despite all the planning, the British attack had trouble making much progress. Rommel's defences in the south, especially around the Alam Halfa ridge, were too strong to break through. Montgomery soon realised that continuing to attack in the south would cause too many losses and could lead to a deadlock. So, he made an important change in strategy. Instead of continuing to hit Rommel's strongest defences, he shifted his focus to the northern part of the front, where the 9th Australian Division was positioned. Montgomery knew that the 9th Division was tough, experienced, and capable of handling intense fighting in difficult conditions. They had already shown their strength in Tobruk and were well trained for desert warfare. The Australians were also particularly skilled at coordinating artillery, infantry, and tanks, giving them an advantage when attacking fortified positions. Montgomery gave the order for the Australians to switch from their drive westwards to an attack northward. This choice would soon turn out to be a genius tactical change. The 9th Australian Division, supported by British, New Zealand, South African, and Australian artillery units, began its attack, moving forward under the cover of the biggest artillery bombardment of the war so far. The barrage lasted for 5.5 hours, with each gun firing around 600 rounds, totaling more than 529,000 shells. Their goal was to break through Rommel's defences and take control of important positions near the coast. The Australians encountered strong resistance from German and Italian troops who were well dug in, but they kept pushing forward without giving up. Pressing forward with an unyielding resolve, they were hit with heavy machine gun and mortar fire from well-fortified enemy positions. The battle was intense, with the enemy protected by multiple layers of defences, including deep minefields and barbed wire. Despite this, the disciplined infantry pressed on, supported by the artillery bombardment. The Australians used Bangalore torpedoes to break through the barbed wire, which allowed them to cross the minefields and attack the enemy. By October 26th, after days of tough fighting, the 9th Division made significant progress, especially around the crucial areas of Trig 29 and Mitaria Ridge. The 2nd 48th Battalion was key in taking Trig 29, which became a valuable spot for directing artillery fire against enemy counterattacks. Although outnumbered and constantly under fire, the Australians managed to hold the important positions they captured. The gains made by the Australians worried Rommel. He was all too familiar with the resolve of the Australian 9th Division, having been unable to break them in the Siege of Tobruk the previous year, and again finding them a tough nut to crack 2 months prior in the First Battle of El Alamein. Rommel quickly realised that if he didn't stop the Australians now, his entire offensive could fall apart. So he did exactly what Montgomery had hoped for. He diverted his strongest units from the south to fight the 9th Division in the north. Rommel's best troops included elite German 15th and 21st Panzer Divisions and the 90th Light Infantry Division. These divisions had earned their reputations as the core of Rommel's Afrika Korps, leading highly effective blitzkrieg attacks in earlier desert campaigns. Their strength lay in their experience, discipline, and superior tactics, especially in tank warfare. The 15th Panzer Division was one of Rommel's most formidable armoured units, equipped with a mix of medium tanks such as the Panzer III and IV. The division had been involved in numerous successful operations across North Africa, including the Battle of Gazala and the Siege of Tobruk, and was known for its mobility and firepower. Similarly, the 21st Panzer Division had a strong reputation due to its combat experience in previous battles. It was one of the Afrika Korps' primary armoured divisions, with effective leadership and a solid track record in mechanised warfare, which was crucial in the open desert terrain. And lastly, the 90th Light Infantry Division. This division, though not as heavily armoured as the Panzer divisions, was highly effective in mobile infantry tactics. They had experience in rapid deployments and fighting under harsh desert conditions. Their flexibility and ability to defend or attack with light equipment made them invaluable in the dynamic North African theatre. These units were considered Rommel's best because they had demonstrated superior cohesion, manoeuvrability, and combat effectiveness under challenging conditions. Their diversion to the northern sector at El Alamein to counter the Australians was critical, but would also turn out to be the pivotal point of the conflict, as it left Rommel's southern defences weak and vulnerable. Montgomery seized this opportunity and, on November 2nd, launched Operation Supercharge, a decisive attack aimed at breaking the Axis defences near Tel El Akakir, a critical point in Rommel's line. The operation began with an intense 7-hour aerial bombardment, followed by a massive artillery barrage. British infantry brigades, supported by tanks from the 8th and 50th Royal Tank Regiments, pushed through minefields and Axis defences. The 9th Armoured Brigade led a bold charge to break the Axis gun line, despite heavy resistance from German and Italian anti-tank units. This assault faced formidable opposition, including 88mm flak guns and Italian 47mm artillery, but managed to destroy around 35 enemy guns. However, the cost was high. Of the 94 tanks that began the attack, only 14 remained operational by the end, with over 230 crew members killed, wounded, or captured. Despite these losses, the British forces managed to push Rommel's troops back. The turning point came as Rommel's weakened lines, stretched thin by his desperate attempts to stop the Australians, could not hold. The 9th Australian Division had forced the hand of one of the world's greatest generals, and the Axis line collapsed under pressure. Rommel's panzer divisions had been reduced to just 35 tanks by this point, with much of their artillery and anti-tank weapons destroyed or disabled. As the British armour advanced, Rommel's Afrika Corps was forced into a full retreat across the desert, with many Italian divisions left behind due to lack of transport. British forces pursued, capturing many prisoners and destroying enemy equipment. Though the British tanks faced stiff resistance, the Axis line had been broken, and Rommel's forces were in disarray. By November 4th, Rommel recognized that his army could no longer hold its position and ordered a general withdrawal to avoid facing total annihilation. The Australians' courage made this victory possible. Their determination and the gains they achieved became the major catalyst in the battle, forcing Rommel's hand and ultimately their retreat. The British forces, including the 1st and 7th Armoured Divisions, continued to pursue the retreating Axis troops westward, marking the effective end of the battle. Montgomery's strategy had succeeded, delivering the knockout blow that ended Rommel's hopes in North Africa. The diversion caused by the Australians played a key part in changing the course of the war. Their hard fighting, sacrifices, and determination showed once again that when Australian soldiers stand strong, history is made. General Bernard Montgomery, visiting the graves at the Alamein cemetery on the 25th anniversary of the battle, turned to a friend and said, "The more I think back, the more I realise that winning was only made possible by the bravery of the 9th Australian Division in holding the road against counterattacks and slowly pushing forward despite increasing casualties. I do not know of any other Allied division who could have done it." The Second Battle of El Alamein was a massive victory for the Allies and a turning point in World War II. It ended the Axis threat to Egypt and the Suez Canal, and it marked the beginning of the end for Rommel's forces in North Africa. Over the next few months, the British and their allies chased the Germans across Libya, eventually forcing their surrender in Tunisia in May 1943. For the 9th Australian Division, El Alamein was a moment of glory and sacrifice. They had suffered over 5,500 casualties, including more than 1,200 killed, but their efforts had been crucial to the Allied victory. Their exceptional bravery earned them the prestigious El Alamein Battle Honour, and individual soldiers were awarded numerous medals, including several Victoria Crosses, Australia's highest military decoration for valour. Their courage, skill, and determination had earned them a place among the most respected fighting units of World War II. Even today, Australians remember the 9th Division's heroics at El Alamein with pride. Their actions not only helped win the battle, but also showed the world just how tough and capable the Australian Defence Forces were. This victory wasn't just about beating Rommel, it was about showing that when the chips were down, Australians would always stand their ground and fight. The 9th Division's actions in this critical battle earned them recognition from both Allied and Axis commanders. General Montgomery himself nicknamed them the Magnificent Ninth for their exceptional bravery and effectiveness in combat. Even Field Marshal Rommel praised their strength, describing them as immensely big and powerful men, who without question represented an elite formation of the British Empire, a fact that was also evident in battle. Their contributions are honoured with a war memorial at El Alamein, a lasting testament to their heroic legacy. The bravery of the 9th Division at El Alamein remains a source of national pride for Australia, reminding us of the incredible sacrifices made by those who fought for our freedom. If you're as passionate about Australia's military history as we are, then be sure to share this video. And if you would like to see more stories like this one, then hit the like button Share your comments with us and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.